different will be in plenary room 4 on level 1. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite Yang Berbahagia Mr. Roslan Abdullah from Institute Darul Rizwan IDR to brief us on the Pangkor Dialogue 2017 conference. Mr. Roslan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very, very good morning to each and every one of you. In approximately 20 to 25 minutes' time, Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku Sultan will be arriving, and in the meantime, I just would like to again welcome all of you to Pangkor Dialogue 2017. Some call Pangkor Dialogue almost a reunion of old friends, because we see familiar faces throughout, speakers and everyone. But to those who are new to Pangkor Dialogue, allow me to just reintroduce you a little bit about Institute Darul Rizwan. It was set in 2009, responsible for the transformation roadmap called Perak Banjaya. It is a socio-economic transformation supported by economic, regional, institutional transformation. What needs to be focused? Where are we going to do it? And who's going to drive it? Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you look into your bag that was given when you registered, there are two forms. One is called the Pangkor Dialogue Summary Form, and the other one is Impact Survey Pangkor Dialogue. Yeah? It is in your bag. If you could kindly fill it up and present it to the IDR booth, we'll be giving you a small token of, I thought it was leather, but it's a leather string, almost leather notebook to remind you of Pangkor Dialogue when you go home to your respective countries, yeah? Pangkor Dialogue actually started in 2013 as a prelude. That was in Impiana Hotel in Ipoh. And later, 2014 to until today, 2017, is here in Kajurida. And making the future innovative pathway to sustainable development is the theme. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned by Dr. Mazda, the brainchild of Yama Muhammad MB, is to create Perak Festival of Ideas. Our KPI is to develop 10,000 ideas in 1 week. And inshallah, looking at the crowd and the participation of Perakian, inshallah, we'll be able to achieve that target. Now, I would like to bring your attention to the screen to show you and to share with you what happened in Pangkor Dialogue 2016. That was Pangkor Dialogue 2016. I was informed that Duli Yang Mulia Tuanku Sultan is arriving very, very soon. I would like to urge each and every one to please remain seated. And I know it has been mentioned so many times, please make sure that your phone is on silent mode. Yeah, that's number one. And number two, lunch. We will be having lunch today, yeah, and it will be served at 2 levels. Here, this ground level and right on top, on the first floor. Yeah, lunchtime will be during lunchtime. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Institute Darul Rizwan again, I would like to welcome all of you again to Pangkor Dialogue 2017. We really do hope that you will enjoy Pangkor Dialogue, enjoy listening, learning, engaging, challenging, as much as we have enjoyed putting together our thoughts in organizing this event. It has been, for the last 4 years, an honor to organize this for Perak. With that, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and have a great Pangkor Dialogue 2017. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you, Mr. Roslan Abdullah. While we are waiting for the arrival of His Royal Highness the Sultan of Perak, we request for all ladies and gentlemen delegates to kindly remain in the hall as we await the arrival of His Royal Highness the Sultan of Perak Darul Rizwan. And I think we would also like to share with you the task of the Northern Corridor Implementation Authority, NCIA, through this video. Let's take a look.
Bagiku satu masa untukku berkata, makna sebenar merdeka kita terlupa. Bagiku satu ketika untukku berdoa, ke depan satu bangsa Malaysia selamanya. Berdiri teguh untuk negara, tunjukkanlah pada dunia. Terbanglah dengan sepasang sayap, dan ku bawa hingga akhir angkasa. Terbanglah, kan ku pegang merah, dan ku laungkan suara hati mereka.
Kita sebagai rakyat Malaysia, tidak kira apa warna kulit, bangsa, keturunan maupun agama, dapat menzahir dan membuktikan kesyukuran terhadap nikmat ini.
Saya merakamkan sekalum tahniah dan terima kasih kepada pihak berkuasa pelaksanaan Koridor Utara atau NCIA dan pihak-pihak yang terlibat kerana telah berjaya menyediakan Blueprint 2.0 ini.
Thank you for your kind attention, and we will now wait for the cue to announce the arrival of His Royal Highness, the Sultan of Perak Darul Rizwan. And once again, I would like to repeat again, we would appreciate it if you would kindly take note of the following. I would like to repeat what I said earlier. We seek your kind cooperation to kindly stand to welcome the arrival of His Royal Highness, the Sultan of Perak Darul Rizwan, when we announce His Royal Highness's arrival. Kindly remain standing as the state anthem will be played immediately upon the arrival of His Royal Highness. After presenting the royal address, His Royal Highness will be with us for the first 2 keynote presentations. And throughout the proceedings, it is with deep emphasis that we would appreciate it if you could kindly refrain from sitting cross-legged, as this is deemed inappropriate in the presence of His Royal Highness. And kindly take note that you may be captured on the big screen and in front of you, and you obviously do not want to be seen doing so, and especially by His Royal Highness. So once again, please kindly refrain from sitting cross-legged throughout the proceedings. His Royal Highness and all guests will be invited for the royal lunch, which will be served on level 1. To all speakers and participants, please take note that the afternoon plenary sessions will begin at 2 p.m. And the plenary session on economy will be in Hall 1, plenary session on women in Hall 2, plenary session on entrepreneurship and innovation in Hall 3, and the plenary session on Dare to be Different will be in plenary room 4 on level 1. Any questions, you can be directed to the Secretariat of Pangkor Dialogue 2017. So let's relax and enjoy, and we will wait for the queue for the arrival of His Royal Highness, the Sultan of Perak. Thank you once again for your cooperation.
badan bercinta, tetapi menderita. Oh, kau tinggalkan diriku, oh Tuhan, mengapakah kau bezakan hidupku, oh Tuhan, mengapakah manusia begitu engkau laksana.
Hadirin sekalian, mengumumkan keberangkatan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Sultan Perak Darul Rizwan diiringi Yang Amat Berhormat Menteri Besar Perak Darul Rizwan dan Div-Div Kenamaan. Announcing the arrival of His Royal Highness the Sultan of Perak Darul Rizwan, accompanied by the Honourable Menteri Besar of Perak Darul Rizwan and dignitaries. Hadirin sekalian, dipersilakan duduk. Ladies and gentlemen, you may take your seats. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat sejahtera. Menghadap Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Sultan Perak Darul Rizwan, Sultan Nazrin Muizzuddin Shah, Ibni Almarhum Sultan Azlan Muhibbuddin Shah Almarfullah. Ampun tuanku beribu-ribu ampun, sembah patik mohon diampun. Patik mohon ampuni limpah perkenan Duli Yang Maha Mulia tuanku untuk patik memulakan majlis. Ampun tuanku. Bagi pihak penganjur Pangkor Dialog 2017, patik dengan penuh hormat dan takzimnya merafak sembah, menjunjung setinggi-tinggi kasih di atas limpah perkenan Duli Yang Maha Mulia tuanku sudi mencemar Duli berangkat untuk menyempurnakan titah diraja dan perasmian Pangkor Dialog 2017 ini. Sesungguhnya keberangkatan Duli tuanku amatlah besar artinya kepada patik sekalian dan sudah tentunya menambahkan lagi seri majlis ini. Patik dengan penuh hormat dan takzimnya merafak sembah memohon limpah perkenan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku untuk Patik mengacarakan majlis ini dalam bahasa Inggeris dan turut mengalu-alukan tetamu-tetamu kehormat serta hadirin sekalian. Ampun Tuanku. Yang amat berhormat Datuk Seri Diraja Dr. Zamri bin Abdul Kadir, the Menteri Besar of Perak Darul Ridzuan. Yang amat berbahagia Orang Kaya Bendahara Seri Maharaja Datuk Seri Diraja Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Zahidi bin Haji Zainuddin. Yang berbahagia Dr. Mazlan Khamis, Chief Executive Officer Institute Darul Ridzuan. Yang berbahagia Datuk Reza Rafiq, Chief Executive Northern Corridor Implementation Authority. Mr. Stefan Prisner, UNDP's Resident Representative to Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei. Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers and guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to you and welcome to the opening ceremony of the Pangkor Dialogue 2017. This international forum on sustainable and inclusive development enters its 4th edition this year, and the theme this time is Making the Future, Innovative Pathways to Sustainable Development. We are indeed honored and privileged to be able to welcome His Royal Highness the Sultan of Perak Darul Ridzuan to deliver the royal address and also to declare open this conference. For this, we would like to record our sincere and heartfelt gratitude to His Royal Highness. We would also like to thank all guests and speakers for your kind presence and support. And to all participants from Malaysia as well as from abroad, we hope you will have a good and fruitful time here. Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, to begin the program, may we call upon the Honourable Datuk Seri Diraja Dr. Zamri bin Abdul Kadir, the Menteri Besar of Perak Darul Ridzuan, as the host, to deliver the welcome address. Dengan segala hormatnya dipersilakan.
Ampun Tuanku. Sometimes they always put the rostrum there. So, Ampun Tuanku. Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera, salam negaraku Malaysia, salam Perak Aman Jaya. Menghadap ke bawah duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Sultan Perak Darul Ridzuan, Sultan Nazrin Muizzuddin Shah, Ibni Almarhum Sultan Azlan Muhibbuddin Shah, Al-Mafullah. Ampun Tuanku, beribu-ribu ampun, sembah Patik mohon diampun. Izinkan Patik mengawali bicara, mengangkat syukur kepada Allah yang Maha Kuasa, menyusun junjungan kasih tidak terkira buat duli Tuanku yang bitara atas kesudian mencemar duli ke majlis bermakna ini. Sesungguhnya, keberangkatan Tuanku ke majlis ini menzahirkan keprihatinan Tuanku terhadap negeri yang tercinta dan rakyat jelata, serta program-program keilmuan sesuai dengan kesarjanaan ke bawah duli Tuanku jua. Ampun Tuanku, dengan penuh hormat dan takzimnya, Patik mohon izin dan perkenan ke bawah duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku untuk seterusnya menyampaikan ucapan buat hadirin sekalian. Ampun Tuanku. Excellencies, respected ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to welcome all of you to Pangkor Dialogue 2017. On behalf of the people and the state of Perak, we would like to express our sincere gratitude for your presence in this opening ceremony. We are highly appreciative of His Royal Highness Tuanku's gracious presence today to officiate the event and deliver the royal address. Indeed, His Highness Tuanku's distinguished scholarly credentials and intellectual distinctions have inspired us to initiate Pangkor dialogues and celebrate knowledge as a traditions and culture of the state. 4 years ago, in a casual discussion, I posed a simple question to my team. That is, how do we turn Perak to be a center of intellectual activities, a hub for knowledge, and a cauldron of activities, creativities, and innovation? Or simply put, making Perak a knowledge-based state and constructing a new sustainable economic development models. In the same light, the United Nations had resolved similar agenda in the form of the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, which is a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity. This was mooted in June 2012. Interestingly, Perak Aman Jaya Blueprint, conceived in 2009, shared the same ideals and aspirations. Among others, to eradicate poverty with the commitment to leave no one behind. Or in our Bahasa tagline we call, tiada tertinggal, tiada terpinggir. Ladies and gentlemen, 4 years on, Pangkor Dialogue has shown some interesting achievement. United Nations Development Program, or UNDP, has recognized Pangkor Dialogue is the only SDGs program and deliberations in this part of the world. Ipoh is now officially recognized as the first social business city in ASEAN, the second in Asia, and the fifth in the world by the Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus last year. The Lonely Planet recognized Perak among the top 10 must-visit regions in the world for 2017. Ipoh is now an emerging meeting place of great minds and a preferred meetings, incentive, conference, and exhibition of minds hub. Pangkor Dialogue has been dubbed as the Davos of Southeast Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to put on record our heartfelt gratitude to Northern Corridor Implementations Authority, or NCRA, for collaborating with Institute Darul Ridwan in organizing Pangkor Dialogue 2017. This symbolizes strategic relations and synergy between the federal and the state government. This also goes to UNDP, state JLCs, and others. It is the aspiration of Pangkor Dialogue to be the world preferred avenues for the meeting in the field of sustainable development. A distinguished economist, John Maynard Keynes, said, "Ideas shape the course of history." Let us now share and celebrate our ideas and create a new glorious legacy for the future generation. Or in our language, we call, mari kita raikan ide. Let's celebrate ideas, or in Spanish, they call, celebremos ideas. Or in Arabic, they call, da'una nahtafilu al-afkar. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly allow me to offer our sincerest appreciation to Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Sultan Perak Darul Ridwan, Sultan Nazrin Muizzuddin Shah, Ibni Almarhum Sultan Azlan Muhibbuddin Shah Al-Mahfullah, for his royal patronage, counsels and wisdom. Ampun tuanku, beribu-ribu ampun, sembah patik, pohon diampun. Demikianlah berakhirnya ucapan patik sempena majlis ini. Patik sekali lagi dengan penuh hormat dan takzimnya merafak sembah menjunjung kasih di atas limpah perkenan Duli tuanku mencemar Duli berangkat ke majlis perasmian Pangkor Dialog 2017. Patik mohon dengan segala kerendahan menyusun 10 jari. Jika ia tiada tertib, patik pohonkan keampunan, dan jika ia tiada hemah, patik pohonkan petunjuk. Patik menjunjung kasih tuanku, ampun tuanku, sembah patik mohon diampun.
Terima kasih. Thank you, Yang Amat Berhormat. Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, we would now like to invite you to focus your attention on the screen for this special video on the highlights of Perak Festival of Ideas. May we now call upon the Honorable Datuk Sri Diraja Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir to humbly invite His Royal Highness, the Sultan of Perak Darul Rizwan, to present the royal address to mark the official opening of the Pangkor Dialogue 2017.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. A very good morning, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here this morning and to be given the opportunity to address such a distinguished audience. To all our visitors from near and far, may I take this opportunity to bid all of you a warm welcome to the city of Ipoh and to the state of Perak. Ipoh and the surrounding areas was once the center of the world's tin mining industry. Its many heritage buildings reflect the glory of days gone by. And today, the city of Ipoh looks towards building a future as a sustainable city. A city where diverse cultures meet, offering opportunities for creativity, for knowledge generation, the spread of ideas, and the harnessing of technologies to generate greater levels of societal well-being and development. My address this morning will focus on the major trends that I see are occurring in the world today that are forcing us to reevaluate about how we think about development. Let me begin by saying that interest in the factors that underpin the growth and development of nations is as old as the discipline of economic inquiry itself. Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, stressed the importance of capital accumulation and increasing specialization in creating the foundations of wealth. The study of development took on new impetus following the Second World War as newly independent countries searched for strategies to improve the lives of their population. Early notions of development focus almost exclusively on material development as the basis of economic growth. The American Nobel laureate Simon Kuznets in 1955 introduced the concept of the inverted U-curve to argue that as countries develop economically, inequality would worsen, but once a threshold was reached, it would decline. Another economist, Julius Berger, introduced the concept of the dual economy, where he referred to urban economic sectors as being open to modernization and rural subsistence sectors as being closed to it, hence creating the rural-urban divide. While some of these ideas remain relevant today, more contemporary perspectives on development stress the importance of policy, trade and investment, education and health, macroeconomic management and institutions, and technological change in explaining human development. By the end of the 1990s, there was a concerted move among the international community to reduce the persistent problem of poverty that after all these years of development remain a serious barrier to economic growth. Hence, the adoption by world leaders of the Millennium Development Goals in the year 2000, issues of education, health, and other indicators of human development were increasingly viewed as drivers of productivity and growth. Around the same time, the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development published a report entitled Our Common Future, which for the first time put sustainable development on the global agenda. The clarion call for sustainable development has since been well received throughout the world. And in September of 2015, a historic special summit at the United Nations saw the world's leaders adopting Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals as the way forward. In essence, sustainable development refers to the provision of material and non-material needs to all in ways that can be sustained over the long term, while at the same time protecting the environment and promoting peace and good governance. Unlike earlier notions of development, sustainable development requires the simultaneous achievement of the following goals. Firstly, steady and sustainable growth with good distribution. Secondly, equitable access to resources and capabilities. Third, equitable and widespread healthcare provision. And finally, a switch from dependence on fossil fuels to green processes. Today, we see major global trends and emerging issues that are calling into question previous notions about development. There is growing recognition that in a more globalized world, people have complex needs that no longer fit traditional approaches and assumptions. I want this morning to focus on 5 of what I consider to be these major trends are. First, the advent of new technologies is transforming the world and how people are living their lives. Advancements in big data analytics, communications, robotics, and artificial intelligence are pushing boundaries that are both expected and unpredictable. The speed and extent of change is such that some futurists believe that we are reaching an historical tipping point, which will transform our world beyond recognition. This creates extraordinary opportunities for the world, where new technologies create opportunity for change and improve outcome for people. But at the same time, the acceleration of technological change also presents major challenges for us all as we navigate through the turbulent and unpredictable world. Advances in artificial intelligence, robotization, and biotechnology are already allowing innovations such as genetically modified insects and artificially enhanced humans. These are very welcome for their medical and humanitarian contributions. But such developments also raise deep and challenging questions about even what it means to be human. Beyond such difficult philosophical questions lie the more immediate and equally challenging issues of the future of work and the workplace in an era of increasingly capable artificial intelligence and robotics. I will return to this issue of the future of work a bit later. Second, demographic dynamics, including population growth, aging, migration, and urbanization, are changing the very makeup of society. This year alone, 13% of the global population will reach the age of 60 or over, with the most rapid aging occurring in Europe, North America, Asia, and Latin America, putting strains on welfare and healthcare systems. Africa, by contrast, has a young population, which provides an opportunity for a demographic dividend. As it has become easier for people to move, factors such as poverty, unemployment, conflicts, and natural hazards are compelling people to migrate in large numbers in search of better lives. International migration has reached record levels, at 244 million migrants worldwide in 2015 alone, a 41% increase compared with the year 2000. Internal migration is also growing, driving rapid increases in urbanization. On the one hand, urbanization fosters growth and provides a higher quality of life. On the other, it raises concerns about urban poverty, social tensions and disparities, changes in family patterns, and environmental risks. Third, while extreme poverty in developing countries has declined significantly, incidences of poverty and inequality still persist in many parts of the world and present considerable challenges. Because of gender, age, disability, or geographic location, 800 million people today struggle to survive at the bottom of virtually every single socio-economic indicator we can think of. Economic growth has also led to a widening gap between the richest and the poorest groups, both within and between countries. China, for instance, has lifted 700 million people out of poverty in the last 3 decades. But today, it has one of the world's most unequal societies. A recent study by Oxfam shows the combined wealth of the world's richest 1% to be more than that of the remaining 99% of the global population. And the world's 8 wealthiest individuals own the same amount as the bottom 50% of the world's population combined. Excessive income and wealth inequality threatens to eventually drag down the economic growth rate and make growth less sustainable over time. Fourth, we have an environmental crisis looming on the horizon. If we consider the desires of developing countries to narrow and eventually close the gap between their income levels and those of the developed world, we are looking at a potential 3-fold increase in world output by the year 2050. This begs the question of how economic improvement can be reconciled with environmental sustainability when the world is already pushing against the limits of planetary boundaries. Humanity is placing tremendous pressure on the climate, on oceans, on land use, and on other species. Pressure that could have disastrous effects on future generations and is already having disastrous effects on highly vulnerable populations in dry lands, desert regions, coastal regions, and other danger zones. These are effects that unfortunately the present generation may not have the incentives to deal with. If the predictions of climate change are accurate, and I, for one, believe that they are, despite the views of some people in the White House and elsewhere, then there will be greater competition for resources. This means that those at the bottom of the development ladder will have to bear the brunt of damage and be priced out of any equation for further development. In the world's poorest regions, warmer temperatures increase the risk of the spread of diseases, and less predictable weather patterns can do harm to crop yields, which in turn affect food security and income levels. A recent report by the World Bank, one of the first to connect climate and poverty, shows that at present rates of greenhouse gas emissions, an additional 100 million people would slip into extreme poverty by the year 2030. Nearly half of them will be in South Asia. Food prices in sub-Saharan Africa will jump by 12% by 2030 due to falling farm yields. And extreme weather events such as droughts, floods, mega heat waves, mega storms, big cyclones, and hurricanes will displace millions more of the world's most vulnerable populations. Fifth, violent conflict and humanitarian crises are undermining the livelihoods of millions of people, affecting their prospects for any further development. As of January this year, the number of people in need of humanitarian aid, mostly as a result of violence, conflict, and disaster, has risen by 12 million to 141 million people. This is 4 times higher than the number at the turn of the century. If these people were a country, theirs would be the 10th largest in the world. Most of them are either refugees or internally displaced populations. A frightening number are dying at sea, and many more are finding their way blocked by closed borders. Displaced populations are increasingly being forced to live in conditions where they have no access to a livelihood or adequate shelter, let alone to education, nutrition, or adequate health care. They rely on humanitarian aid for their very survival. Yet, despite today's global GDP of 78 trillion US dollars, the resources available to help those in dire need are grossly insufficient. In 2016, more than 40% of the required amount for humanitarian assistance was not met. In light of these trends and emerging issues, our notion of what constitutes progress and development has to evolve in order to address current challenges. I want to highlight 3 issues this morning. Firstly, at the most basic level, we need to re-examine the indicators that are currently common use to measure development and human progress. It is not a foregone conclusion that a fast-growing economy alone will make for greater social well-being and for a stable economy. National economic performance has traditionally been measured using GDP and other macroeconomic indicators. Since the 1990s, composite indices such as the Human Development Index, which measure a range of social welfare indicators, including health and education, have become increasingly popular. But there has also been growing recognition that success in relation to national development goals cannot effectively be captured through the use of such indicators alone. One reason is that economic prosperity has, in many cases, been accompanied by other serious challenges, such as environmental degradation. Continuing efforts to address the shortcomings of existing measures of development include the establishment by then French President Nicolas Sarkozy of a Commission on the Measurement of Economic Performance and Social Progress. The Commission concluded that a range of separate indicators is required to capture the different elements of well-being, with GDP still used to measure economic activity, supplemented by social and environmental indicators. Traditional objective measures of well-being can themselves be further strengthened through the use of subjective or self-reported indicators. So while we continue to focus on measures of GDP and material well-being, we should recognize that a broader range of indicators is necessary to monitor more fully trends in development and prosperity. Bhutan realized this more than 4 decades ago and has famously rejected GDP as the measure of progress. Instead of GDP, Bhutan championed gross national happiness, which seeks to achieve well-being through the spiritual, the physical, and social well-being of its people. The concept of happiness as a basis for development has since gained traction at the global level. The first World Happiness Report, published in 2012 by the United Nations, seeks to supplement economic variables such as income and employment with indicators such as health, family life, social safety nets, the freedom to make life choices, generosity, and perceptions of corruption. The cluster of high-performing countries at the top of the World Happiness Report, which includes Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Switzerland, and Finland, point to certain policy features that they share in common. These are countries where fiscal policies are used to generate relatively equal societies, allowing for greater social mobility and income security. Indeed, the report found a strong correlation between equality and happiness. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the list are countries that are either conflict-stricken, poverty-stricken, or both. Countries such as the Central African Republic, Burundi, Tanzania, Syria, and Rwanda. My second point relates to the future of employment. Many of today's jobs will not exist in the future. There are many dire predictions of the coming wave of technological change on employment. One study suggests that at least 50% of 700 different current job categories may be fully automated in the coming years. Moreover, the growing gig economy, leapfrog economies, increasing automation, digital nomads, accelerated technology, and artificial intelligence is profoundly changing not just what types of jobs are going to be available in the future, but also the types of workplaces. the transformation of the workplace will affect the whole range of jobs from blue to white collar. Many careers that require years of specialist training are now within reach of AI software, especially when combined with advancing robotics. In middle-income countries, it is not simply a question of the demand and supply of jobs in the market, but an issue of youth disinterest in the types of jobs available. Profound job displacement, particularly in fragile economies in parts of Asia and Africa, is predicted. With 1.4 billion people, China potentially could face more than 600 million people in search of new ways to work and live if it keeps up with Western automation levels. Unlike much of the 20th century, we are now seeing a falling ratio of employment to population, and many of the underlying trends in technology are likely to accelerate the disruption to jobs in the services sector. In parts of Asia and Africa, where the youth bulge is emerging, there is a risk of masses of young people left idle without jobs, potentially leading to unrest and mass migrations into cities, further exacerbating challenges there. Moreover, the benefits of these emerging technologies will not be felt by all equally, and the digital divide can create further inequality for those left behind. These developments have profound implications on how our institutions of education prepare our young men and women to address the disruptive force accelerating technological change. This is why policy making on education, particularly in STEM fields, is all so important. The choices we make today in these areas can help shape and determine how these processes play out in the future. My third and final point concerns government's ability to access funding to meet the Sustainable Development Goals going forward. In the foreseeable future, and in many countries, government's ability to strategically mobilize various sources of financing for development purposes will be difficult, given continuing fiscal crisis and the rolling back of many essential services. UN estimates suggest that developing countries will require more than 2.5 trillion US dollars a year to achieve the SDGs by the year 2030. The same is true of humanitarian crises. Climate change, unpredictable natural disasters that are escalating in severity and compounded by political instability, poverty, the emergence of new diseases, and the persistence of old ones will likely bring an escalation of humanitarian crisis that will require financing far beyond the current capacity to deliver. Therefore, new financing models are required to mobilize adequate resources in order to close the development and humanitarian financing gap. There are today a number of new financing models being considered. These models are projected to unlock private capital and help further leverage public funding to mobilize various new sources of investment for social services and development goals. These range from equity-based crowdfunding and P2P to alternative currencies, smart remittances, impact investment, social impact bonds that provide a part of the solution to address the financing gap. In this respect, I want to suggest that the role of Islamic finance is particularly important. Of the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the world today, 90% occur in OIC member states. 31 of the 33 conflicts today occur in Muslim majority countries. Various Islamic financial institutions are working to address the issue of how Islamic instruments such as Waqaf, Zakat, and Sukuk can be channeled effectively and efficiently to meet development and humanitarian needs. This will not be easy, given the tasks of coordination and harmonization that will be required. But the very potential is there for Islamic finance to provide solutions to the global development and humanitarian financing needs. The Islamic Development Bank has estimated that the market value of Waqaf in India alone could be as much as $24 billion. Similarly, the bank's research on Zakat in 2015 conservatively estimates between 200 billion and 600 billion circulating annually. Just a tiny fraction of Zakat could make an enormous difference to the scale of the global funding deficit for the year 2015. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we look forward into an uncertain future, we can also learn lessons from history. The story of our recent past is one of previously undreamt of human progress, however uneven and incomplete. Life expectancy has tripled since the Industrial Revolution, while the lives of hundreds of millions have been significantly improved. We must now ensure that the even more amazing gains that are likely to be made this century are managed effectively and for the greater good of humanity. With that, I thank you.
Menjunjung kasih Tuanku. Ladies and gentlemen, that marks the official opening of the Pangkor Dialogue 2017. Thank you, Your Royal Highness. Ampun Tuanku, ladies and gentlemen, let's focus our attention once again on the screen, this time for a video showing the highlights of the Pangkor Dialogue 2017.
In any form of human activities, you need ideas, and Perak needs ideas to move forward.
Pangkor Dialogue is an international knowledge exchange. That's how I see Pangkor Dialogue. Yeah? It is an event that explores the challenges and what it takes to build a resilient society, what it takes to build an inclusive society in light of the external environment, in light of the prevailing conditions of the economy.
Pangkor Dialogue is actually branding Perak. You need to do the packaging now, you need to do the marketing now.
So we know that sustainability, inclusiveness is a global issue. The good thing is that we catch on it with not just ours, but actually it's shared globally, and hence the theme stays. So now we brand Pangkor Dialogue as the international dialogue on sustainability and inclusive development.
Sustainable development from social perspectives, as Pangkor dialogue not only emphasizes on economic development but also inclusive growth. So somewhere along the line, women have got to decide what they want to do.
When it comes to sustainable development goals, it affects everybody. There is no one literally left behind, because you're talking about environment. If we do not take care of it, there's not going to be a planet.
By having this Pangkor dialogue, all the different elements and all the different skill sets are meeting together in that melting pot, right? And when they meet together in that melting pot, it becomes more synergistic, it becomes a show and tell, and it also becomes a best practice sharing session so that other people can learn.
I feel Pangkor Dialogue offers us the platform to engage with as many people as possible to showcase solutions that work.
I am very inspired by the Pangkor International Dialogue and Perak Festival of Ideas. It's an ideal platform for young people to come out and share their ideas. But not only that, the challenge now is how do you take that platform and realize your ideas?
We believe that ideas are the key to progress. I'm a firm believer in ideas. Our aim, we hope that the world will know what Pangkor Dialogue is all about. The program we call Tiada Terpinggir, Tiada Tertinggal. There is no one left behind.
Ampun Tuanku, ladies and gentlemen, as part of this morning's opening ceremony, we have with us two very distinguished speakers who will present the keynote addresses. The first keynote speaker is Dr. Catherine K.D. Coleman. Before we invite her onto the stage, let us get to know her first through this video. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Catherine K.D. Coleman.
Sultan Nazrin Muizuddin Shah, Dato Sri Teraja Dr. Zambri, Dr. Mazalan Kamis, esteemed guests, and ladies and gentlemen. I am so honored to be here, but you may be wondering why a person from space has come here. And it really comes down to what we've already heard about, that our job, our task, because we know the mission, is to scan globally and act locally. And I've learned a lot already this morning, listening to Tuanku. I'm learning different things that are similar in my environment and in the sustainability environment. So we're all learning. And actually, even though we're all meeting each other right now, today, we were already meant to be together. I have seen you. I lived on the space station for 6 months, and I orbited the Earth 16 times every day. And I got to look down at the Earth and see knowing that everyone I knew was there. Now, I'm on a space station, and it's very clear to me that myself and my 5 other crewmates, we are 6 total, we are the crew of that space station. And when I look at our planet, both fragile and strong, knowing that everyone who exists is down here on the planet, it's very clear to me that you are the crew of Spaceship Earth. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to share some stories from my adventures in space. I'm going to share a little bit about our mission. I'm retired as an astronaut just last year, and yet the mission continues because it's a very pressing mission. I am driven in a certain kind of exploration. My world that I choose to explore is space. I say that what you're choosing to explore is sustainability and world development. And we have many, many similarities. So let me just share some of the stories. I've talked about the space station. We'll talk much more about that. I also flew 2 times on the space shuttle Columbia. And the woman in the middle was the commander of my second mission, Dr. Eileen Collins, Colonel Eileen Collins, first woman to command the space station, and I was part of her crew. And our job was to deploy the Chandra X-ray Observatory. This is a telescope. It's part of the family of telescopes at NASA that looks at all the different colors of the universe, all the different energies of the universe. And this particular telescope, costing almost $2 billion, was my job to launch, to make sure I delivered it safely to orbit. It's the telescope that tells us everything about when stars are exploding, supernovas, when galaxies are colliding, and when black holes are sucking everything in. They're also spewing everything out. Those are X-rays. And it's important to understand the world that we live in, the universe that we live in. So I was very proud to be part of that crew. It was an important job, and I think as we go on, you'll understand how I trained to do that job. So that was one shuttle mission. My first mission was 16 days of science experiments, getting ready, paving the way for the International Space Station. My original job was as a scientist, a chemist, a plastics chemist. And the combination of those jobs makes me quite interested in sustainability for exploration and sustainability for Earth. So, my home, a place I was very privileged to live for almost 6 months. We live in the part that is sort of up and down, and that's where it's about, people feel bad for us because it's maybe small. It's actually quite big. It is like 10 train cars without the seats in them, all together, but some are up and some are down, and it's really a lot of space. If we put that space station on a football field, American or European, it would cover the football field. It's huge, and the reason it's giant is because we have a lot of work to do up there. And the work that we're doing right now is getting ready for exploration, for going to Mars. We're doing a lot of science experiments, and many of them have the goal of understanding how do we recycle our air, our water, how do we grow plants in a place where they're very hard to grow. Now, this looks like animation, and I'm very proud to know that it's actually real film. It's not a video game. People are living there, and we are getting ready to go. I launched and landed in the Russian Soyuz from Baikonur in Kazakhstan, and we spent years getting ready as a crew. We go in groups of 3 in the Soyuz, and this is our launch night. I'm waving to my family. My son was 10 years old. My husband is a glass artist. We're doing all of the tests. It gives me chills just to see the film again. We're launching out. Now, we agreed that we would take slow steps and small ones. And I think you can see from the video that we were nervous and they forgot. So I was running to the launch pad. We are inside the very small part at the top. And I launched on the 15th of December, the day after my 50th birthday. It was a very nice birthday present. It only takes 8.5 minutes to reach orbit. We're in that small craft. It's the size of a smart car, a very small car. And here we are just before Christmas, up on the space station. This is my favorite part of the whole movie because it shows what it's like to live in space. Now that it's so big and we have so much work to do, it's not about floating around. It is about flying from place to place, leading the life of Peter Pan. And it is magical, especially if you're someone like me who is maybe not so graceful here on the ground. My job was to capture supply ships. I know I have very good hair up in space. Now, these origami are very special. We were up there during the Japanese tsunami. And we had just captured and brought aboard the Japanese supply module, the supply ship, only the second time that a person, myself actually, had captured a supply ship using the robotic arm and attached it to the space station. And that was the work of our friends, our colleagues. Our hearts were in Japan, looking at the evidence of the tsunami, but our scientific sides had to be working, in that we can provide very valuable information from the space station because we are seeing a picture of what is happening on the ground. We could capture images of Japan as we were going over to understand how much power was left, to understand the state of flooding. I was very happy and privileged to be part of that important work. And I think it shows you the importance of having a view that's different, that can show you that big picture and that small picture. Now, this is the arrival of the space shuttle to the space station. It happened 2 times. 2 shuttles came up while I was there. You see the robotic arm on the bottom, and we are docking. The shuttle is docking with the space station, and on board they have a new module, a new piece of the space station that they will attach. And we're welcoming, the astronaut family is very much a family, including your Sheikh Muzaffar. He was not on this mission, but I will show some images of him. And it's such a privilege to go to space that for all of us, we become instantly a family. Even without our choosing, we are together forever. This is a robot that we're learning up in space, and the robot is the one on the left, just so you know. That's my colleague, Scott Kelly. He was up there for a year. But that robot is helping us to learn how do humans and robots work together. What do we need to know about them, and what do we need to make sure that they're designed to do to really help us? My most terrifying moment, cutting hair in space. And gathering to watch the next crew come up. You notice our kitchen table there, it's not horizontal, because it doesn't need to be. And it's because we're learning to look at things in a whole new way. This is a science experiment you'll see a little bit more about here. Let's see. Just a little bit about spacewalking. I'll say for myself as a smaller person, this is the biggest challenge for me in the work that we do. And I was quite honored. And actually it was the result of really a lot of hard work and the hard work of a team to make sure that I was ready to be on the spacewalking team of the space station. And so that's my spacesuit up there. The other work that I did a lot of the robotics, and it was new. And this is where we have the new companies like SpaceX, like Orbital Sciences, like Blue Origin. They're sending supply ships up to the space station. And this is NASA's space station, along with our international partners of Russia, and Japan, and Canada, and 16 countries in Europe. And so can you imagine one new company, SpaceX, for example, is suddenly going to play with this group that has been working together for years to run an international space station. And part of my job when I came home was to help everybody see this picture in different ways, to understand for the crew, what are people doing on the ground? For the ground, what does it mean to be up in space and to see this supply ship coming? The advice I gave to all of my colleagues, because I was the second person to ever capture this with the robotic arm, the advice that I said to them was, we do so many simulations, but we are always thinking, actually, as Tuan Ku mentioned, we're needing to think about what do these indexes mean? We're using things to measure. What do they measure, but what do they not measure? And when we are practicing in the simulator, it's not the real Earth underneath. It's a picture. And it's really easy to see as the robotic arm is getting closer and closer and closer. But when we did this on the real day, myself and Paolo Nespoli, who's actually on the space station right now, when Paolo and I did this with the Earth, the real Earth, the beautiful Earth, and going in between the arm and the supply ship, it was very difficult to know how close we were getting and how fast we were going. So it was very challenging, and at NASA, we're always thinking, what does this simulate and what does it not? And we can be so busy thinking about and trying to perfect the simulation when we need to always be looking at what is the big picture. So a little bit about the science that we do up there, mostly so that you understand, it's not to make all of you scientists, but it's to help you understand, first of all, that it's important work that cannot be done on Earth. And second, it is helping us understand things that are really important for Earth. So the reason it's both exciting and wonderful and an opportunity up there is in this picture. Everything is floating around. For someone like me who can lose the remote control 2 times every night at home, this is a challenging environment. The floating, the flying, it's magical, it's fun, but it actually gives us an opportunity. For example, we're getting to see, what do liquids really want to do? Down here on the ground, they don't have a choice. They're going to be on the bottom of whatever container they're in. But up in space, it's my colleague André Kuipers from the Netherlands, up in space, we're getting to see exactly what they want to do, because up there, it's not without the big force of gravity, it's the tiny, tiny little forces that become important. The little forces that make the shape on your car that's clean, that make the round shape on your car that is dirty, that make the flat shape, that's surface tension. It's really important here on Earth for every process that involves flow through a pipe or flow. That means rivers, that means factories, that means our pipes, that means medical devices where the really tiny forces are actually important. And in space, we're learning about those tiny forces. We're learning that this is sometimes what liquids really want to do. And space is the place to do that. In the field of combustion, we are lucky that up there, the lighter gases that are given off, they don't rise. And so for us, on the left is Earth, an Earth candle flame. On the right is a space candle flame. And you can see that on the Earth, the lighter gases are rising like hot air balloons. But in space, that won't happen. Weightless. So in space, everything is round like that, and it happens more slowly, and it means that we get to measure things about combustion, not in less than a second, but over 30 or 40 seconds for the same measurement that has to be so fast on Earth. So it's a different way, it's a different lens, a different way to look at a problem and try to be open-minded about what are the solutions that you see. We also work in crystals. Up in space, we can make crystals that are more perfect because they're growing in this very quiet, gentle environment. This is and then we can also do a lot of work on our own health. Up in space, something happens to us, which is that since we are flying everywhere, then we are not sending a message to our brain. Every time I step, I'm sending a message to my brain. She needs these bones, these muscles, she needs them to be strong. The message doesn't come, and I lose bone. In space, we lose bone 10 times faster than a woman who is 70 years old and has osteoporosis. So what she loses in a year, I can lose in 1 month in space. So in 6 months, I can come back missing 10% of my bone mass. It's dangerous, and at the same time, it's an opportunity. Because it's happening fast, it's easier to measure. So we can understand what's going on in this process. Important for space, important for Earth. And I'm happy to say that because of what we're learning, there's good news and there's bad news. So the good news is we have some very good ideas about what's important for maintaining bone mass. The bad news is that exercise is at the top of the list. So we exercise about an hour and a half every day on the space station. And when I cannot speak for other people, but when I came back, I had all of the bone that I went with. Not exactly probably in the same place. The current theory is that we actually, if your bone is a pipe, we lose some bone out of the middle, but by exercising, we are growing bone onto the outside. So I probably have bones that are a little thinner inside, not so connected, but stronger outside. What does that mean for me when I'm getting older? We'll find out. We're scientists. I get a physical and do measurements every single year. So a number of different experiments that we do up there. Let me see if I can get this guy to go. And so we're growing plants in space. And the reason is that on the way to Mars, I personally would like to have food. I love food. And so we need to understand, how do we grow plants in a place where it's difficult? We did a lot of experiments on my first mission, and now in doing small plants, and now we're actually able to grow lettuce on the space station. So we're learning, how do we grow things in a place where it's hard to do that? How can we do that with a minimum of energy? How can we think about soil, about fertilizer in a sustainable way? You know, for exploration, we can't bring very much with us. And so we can't afford to have our fertilizer going into the ground and never seen again. We have to find a way to use all the water that we have very efficiently, to use our energy. Do we need the whole spectrum of light for growing plants? Turns out no. So we're finding these things out for exploring space, but it has very big implications for sustainable Earth. And many of the things that I just talked to you about work the same way. On the way to Mars, we haven't gone to Mars yet because we are not ready. We have a system for recycling the water on the space station, recycling the air on the space station, and of course we have a toilet for human waste. All of those things are breaking more than once every month or two. Not okay for the way to Mars. And it's not because we did things foolishly or because we don't know what we're talking about. It's because we know we have a lot to learn, because things are happening different in this environment. And you also are working with a new environment. When we have, I'm going to go back just one here. When we look at the space station here, looking over the Earth, you can see that my view of the Earth is not to see the whole planet far away. But really, I'm looking at part of the Earth. I'm looking down, and I'm seeing something more like this. And actually, this picture is very timely. It's when we see a hurricane or a typhoon, this is what it looks like to us. And it's a very difficult feeling to look down from space and see this, because we can't really see the ground. We can only see the hurricane, and yet we know that the life of everyone under that storm is very troubled and will never be the same. And so in some ways, it's difficult to be the person that looks globally, sees so many things, and actually can't do anything about some of them. So I think that's part of our task as well. When you see a view like that, I have a feeling like I must be, if I'm seeing something so big, I must be high, looking out and seeing a wonderful Earth. But really, if we think about the Earth, and then we have the space station, and we're looking at the Earth, well, we must be down, right? Whoops, let me go back a little bit. Let's see. That was me on the clicker, my apologies. Let's see. It went very fast. Okay. So we must be looking down. So think about perspective. I'm going to challenge you with thinking about what does it feel like to look at things differently? Often it feels strange. We see places that we know and we love. My crewmate Paolo Nespoli from Italy. Italy, indeed, shaped like a boot. Yes. And for me, this is home. In this picture, you see, I'm from Massachusetts. It's on the far right, the little curve there. That's Cape Cod. I'm from further inland. There's a large reservoir. Actually, I'll sort of point. Let's see, I can't really point, but there's a large reservoir. I'm from right around there. And yet, if you look on the left-hand side of the picture, you're seeing New York City and Long Island and the Hudson River leading up to Canada. So for me, that is home. And yet, if I zoom in a little closer, I can see more. I can think about what everyone is doing down there at home. And I can see home in different lights. And sometimes it's sunset, sometimes it's sunrise. With these windows that we have, instead of just a portal looking out of the space station like on a ship, we now have windows all around. And so I can look and I can see my home in the distance, and then it's coming right above me. And I can twirl around and I can watch it leaving, and I feel like I was there and I will be back. It's a very human way to be present. And when you look down from the space, I don't see the borders of the countries. None of us do. And it becomes actually difficult to feel almost that it's even important to come from a specific place, because it's really clear from being up there and looking down that we're all in one place. We're all on the spaceship Earth. But home is important. And I'm very pleased to bring some pictures of Sheikh Muzaffar. We trained together a little bit right before his mission. I was training, and so I got to see him off and wave goodbye. He's a very nice and interesting man. And I thought I would show you a picture of Malaysia. This is Pangkor Island. I thought the Chief Minister would like this. Am I correct? I think this is Pangkor Island. It's very beautiful from space. So many things are beautiful from space. And if you are on the internet, all of these pictures, I took 60,000 pictures on my mission. And all of those pictures belong to everyone. All of our pictures from the space station belong to everyone. There's no charging, no nothing. And you can find the place that means something to you, the place that's home. And you can see, I think, in the face of your countrymen here, if you're from Malaysia, you can see what it feels like to be in a place where suddenly so many more things are possible, and it just changes your point of view. Sheikh was up there with Peggy Whitson on the right. She just completed a mission of almost 1 year. She's a really remarkable lady, and their crewmate from Russia. Now, we don't get to choose each other when it comes to crews. This is my shuttle. This is my space station crew. When I arrived at the space station with Paolo and with Dimitri, we're in the middle. Already on the space station, there were 3 people. And then we make a crew of 6. Now, after 4 months or so, those 3 go away and 3 more are coming. And so now we are a new crew of 6, and we do not get to choose our crew. There are so many complicating factors, many that are international, many about our skills, and we don't get to go maybe with our friends. But what's fascinating to me, and the reason that I come here today, is that I think that the lessons that we learn about how to see each other can apply for you. When we're on a space station, it's very clear to us that if one of us, one of the 6 here, doesn't do the work, then it won't get done. Sometimes my job is to do the work. Sometimes my job is to help my crewmate who needs help but doesn't know that they need help. Sometimes that is my job. Sometimes my job is to see who has a question that doesn't know how to ask it, or who needs to make an apology that doesn't know how to make the apology, or if I am owed an apology, is it so important? When you think about the mission that I just showed you, probably not. So that is our point of view up on the space station. And yet all of us are individuals. And everyone here in this auditorium is an individual as well. We have different skills, different things that we love, different people that we love, different food that we love. Everyone is different. This is my friend Satoshi Furukawa from Japan. And you're seeing a little bit about what it's like when individuals are living on the space station. All of us are different. We're doing everything you do every day. We're getting up sometimes happy, sometimes we're getting up tired, sometimes we have more to do than we can do, sometimes we like the place we sleep, sometimes we wish it would be just a little bit flat. Some people miss their pillow and they strap a pillow to their head. It's very funny. We don't choose the work that we do. I am a scientist, but I'm not always doing science work. The Russians sent fresh food up to ours on the space station. They sent raw onions for fresh food. I was thinking apples or oranges, but no, onions and pickles. But I learned to love onions and pickles. But here you see that it's a magical place. I like you to see the floating and the flying. For so long, and this I love, because this is Satoshi. And this is where you're making your own way, you're finding your own space in space. Now everyone is busy doing experiments. So Satoshi has to be the whole crew, the whole team. He's playing baseball. And it just gives you an idea of how different it is up there, and it gives us a different point of view that I think can be very helpful. And we'll do just a little of this with the sound, but this is about being brave. Maybe a little less sound, I can already tell. A duet with Ian Anderson of the rock group Jethro Tull, very famous for being the first to bring the flute to rock music, standing on one foot. And so I play the flute, and I love to play, but I'm not the best. I'm really not the best. They did very good things to the recording. They did. We played this together on the 50th anniversary of human spaceflight.
Thanks, Colonel Catherine Coleman and the International Space Station. We should remember that today's cosmonauts, scientists, and astronauts are still every bit the rocket heroes they were 50 years ago. So from the cultural city of Perm in Russia, let's salute Katie, Dima, and Paolo up there in orbit. And of course, the legendary Yuri Gagarin. Go safely.
So we had never met. I was an average flute player who loved to play. So I bring my flute with me. I'm smart enough to know that if I play my flute on the International Space Station, eventually it's going to be on the internet. And I played with someone famous, and we did something unusual, and we did it on the 50th anniversary of human spaceflight, the 50 years after Yuri Gagarin launched from Kazakhstan, from Baikonur, up to space. And we did this duet between Earth and space. So I knew we would see it. And so what did that require in terms of seeing each other, in terms of collaborating, in terms of working in a group together when we hadn't even met in person, only talked on the phone? I had to be brave. And Ian had to be open. Is it hard for him to play? No, he does that all the time. Is it hard for me to play knowing it's with someone like that? Yes. So I had to be brave, and he had to be open. And I submit to you that when you are working in these 2 days, you're getting to know each other, you run into somebody you don't know, maybe you're a little bit tired from the conference, you see them, you're a little bit tired of meeting people, and then you see their name tag and you think, maybe they need to know what I do. Because maybe there's a connection. Maybe it helps them understand what they do more, or maybe we can do something together. And so you need to be brave, and they need to be open. And that is your job while you're here for these 2 days. So towards the end here, I'll just show you some different ways of looking. You see our crew there. But what if we look at that picture this way? Do you see me? Not really, right? And so we're used to looking at people right side up. And what if we kind of look at that upside down? Try this one, okay? On the bottom, we see on the left, we see Tracy in the maroon shirt. We see Stephanie Wilson, aeronautical engineer, African American, on the bottom right. And then we see two people above there. We don't even really notice them. Most people don't, because we are so trained to see in a certain way. We're just used to it, and life is hard, and it's hard to take more time. But now we see Dottie Metcalf-Lindenberger, who's a teacher, an astronaut, and we see Naoko Yamazaki from Japan. So just by turning our heads and looking in a different way, I show you this trick, but really, when you're in a group and you're working, we've talked about being inclusive in terms of sustainable development. To me, that means inclusive of people in the solutions. Because if we are all the same, we will not find our way to the solutions. This slide shows Katherine Johnson. She is a woman who was responsible for the mathematics of determining the orbits of the first people who went to the moon for the Apollo program, and actually in orbiting the Earth, and many more airplanes besides that. She was the person who was responsible. When John Glenn first launched, he would not get in that space capsule until the woman that he had met, who he knew was the expert. They were just beginning to have computers do the math instead of people. And he said, I don't want to go until that woman, the smart one, does the math and tells me it's okay. So this is a very, very valuable woman who was unnoticed for many years at NASA. Here we have her in a picture. Not only is she a woman of color, she's wearing a dress of color. How can you miss this woman in this picture? But for many, there were 200 or more women like her working at NASA, being the computers, and no one really knew they were there. They just did the work. And I bring this up because there are people that we don't notice. And without noticing those people, we will not find our answers for development for space or for development for the Earth. Now, I just want to give you a quick example of how I try to include being an individual, scanning big and yet thinking, what can I do? What can I do today? The eclipse came across America just about 2 weeks ago, and I was very honored to be selected to be one of 4 people that was narrating the eclipse for CNN. And so I knew I would see the eclipse, and I knew that this was a moment that the world was focusing on. And certainly in the United States, where we don't always look far enough outside our borders, we're not realizing that somewhere in the world, every 18 months, there is a solar eclipse. But when we have one, it's important to us, right? But it was important to us. And we had an opportunity when I knew so many people would be focusing on this eclipse. There's 4 people narrating. I am number 3 of 4. And I said, I would love to do this. And this could be me. I can go, I can narrate the eclipse, I can share it with the audience. I'm pretty good at that. But why not use this opportunity to meet some other people? What about, this is my friend Jack, who was brave enough to apply for a great job at NASA because he felt like he was qualified. And then we have 5 Girl Scouts, 5 girls from St. Louis, Missouri, from Eastern Missouri. I said, if you're going to look, if everybody's going to look at that screen, let's make sure they see things that they need to see and they don't even know it. That's also my family, my husband and my son on the right. My son is 17, my husband. And we got to do this as a family. And we created this. Now, when I asked to do this to CNN, they said, Ms. Coleman, it's really immensely more difficult if we are going to use children. I said, I know. But it's important, don't you think? And they did think so. And it was actually so much more difficult than I ever imagined, actually. I will really be honest and tell you that. It really complicated what we did that day immeasurably. And at the same time, we did something really important together. Millions of people saw not only me, but girls saw people that they could relate to. And I think, and this is the crew, this is the CNN crew, plus my family, this is the people that made that happen. They don't even all know each other. We didn't know each other. And we basically landed, just like you're landing last night from the conference. We have 2 days at the conference here. We landed and we had really a lot of work to do, and the solar eclipse was not going to wait. But we had a mission. And even though it was hard, we accomplished it. And something else I want to bring to your attention is that when you see something so amazing as a solar eclipse, it makes you feel very small, not in a bad way, but it's so meaningful. And then when you see something so meaningful with a bunch of other people, we will be a group that are bound by this experience forever. We cannot undo the fact that we saw something amazing together. And that's what these 2 days at the Pangkor Dialogue are. This is a significant opportunity, and none of us ever be the same. It's something that's both a joy and a challenge. It happens in space. This picture here, I think this is my friend Tracy. To me, it's the epitome of humans and their relationship with the earth. And down there, she's looking at you. She's looking at me. She's looking at the crew of Spaceship Earth. We have places to go, both on Earth and for exploration. And often, the challenges are actually very similar, and sometimes they can accelerate each other. And then we use that momentum. The fact that people think it's exciting to work for NASA and to work on recycling water for the space station, for going to Mars, we use that to bring them together. And they say, oh, this is really important for Earth too. Yes. So, you'll be able to see more of this film. This is Europe to the Indian Ocean. I think it might be looking familiar. This is our place. It's a fragile place. The data is out there. The climate is changing. We still live here. We can't do everything, but our job is to look wide and at the same time think on a small scale, how can we do something that will really make a change? And together, we can do that. When I think about the inclusivity, it's really about thinking of the wonder of what we're doing, the importance of what we're doing, thinking of how we're small and we're living in a big place. But home is really, really what it comes down to. This is where I live. It's a beautiful place. I loved the view from space. I didn't actually want to come home yet, because the work was so compelling, and I knew home would be here, but I really wanted to stay. It takes a long time to get good at the work, and I wanted to stay long enough to get more work done. But it was wonderful to come home and to be a part of the very beautiful view. This is my backyard on a beautiful night. And something that keeps our family together is knowing that whether I'm on a space station or I'm in the backyard, my husband and my son and I, we're all seeing the same moon. And that's true for all of us that have gathered from all of these countries. We're all on the same planet. We see the same moon. We see the same beautiful nature. Even if it's different in the places that we live, it's important. This doesn't happen in Malaysia, but where I live, this happens a lot. And I think it also comes down to family. Us, my husband and my son. People don't actually ask the guy astronauts if they feel badly leaving their families, but they ask the women astronauts quite a bit, and I answer them. And I say, of course, I feel very badly leaving my family, but I have a job, I have a talent, I have a privilege to work there, and it's my commitment to do my part, both for the Earth and for exploration. And my family understands that, but it doesn't make it any easier. It does make it a little easier that I know I leave my son in good hands, both with his father and with his cat, who thinks he's a dog. Yes, a little confused. Very, very interesting, very dog-like cat. And, you know, there's articles like that, like this, being a mom in space. I show it to you because I think it's important to realize that we're all different and not everyone needs to be parents. It was important to me, and it doesn't mean that it's easy to keep these things straight and to get everything done. This is me going off to space. My husband sent this picture the night that I launched. It still actually almost makes me cry of my son thinking about his mom there. It's very hard to do. Now, he's grown up just fine, as has the cat. And I have a wonderful husband who is a glass artist. And this is my last point to make to you, and that is that we're all different. We have different talents. My husband is a glass artist. And so it's important to him to explore his own worlds. He's ironically known for making glass planets. Very beautiful, not like the Earth, but just in his imagination. And they're very beautiful. People give us a hard time because, he makes them and I like to go to them. But I think you can see that we are all exploring in different ways. And it's not just about the technical people. It's about the fact that we need artists, we need writers, we need songwriters, we need people who make films, because these are the images that tell us, that give us the vision of where we want to go. And they make it possible for people who have the ways to understand how to actually accomplish the mission. They need a vision. They need to understand. If you want funding, you need to make sure that the people with the funding understand really what is your mission and why should they care. And that involves storytelling. This mission, going further than low Earth orbit, it is next. And we will not do it unless we tell the stories, unless we, each of us on the team, think about what are our talents, and we make sure that on the team it is not people that look the same, but people who look different. It's recognizing that everyone has this look inside them. Everyone, even if you think you know who they are, you don't know who they are, and everyone has this little piece that is curious and wants to be part of the solution. I show you this picture at the end here because I stick out in this picture, but no one knew when I was a child that I would be in a picture like that, and that's why all of the children need to be ready, and that's why all of us need to be part of these solutions. Because we're going to Mars, and this is where we're from. Thank you very much, the crew of the Spaceship Earth.
Thank you very much, Dr. Catherine Katie Coleman. Let's give her another big round of applause. Ampun Tuanku, ladies and gentlemen, our second keynote speaker is His Excellency Jamil Mahwad. It is our pleasure now to introduce him through this slide. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Excellency President Jamil Mahwad.
Thank you very much, Your Royal Highness, distinguished authorities and the speakers, ladies and gentlemen. I want to congratulate those two great presentations we just have heard. I want to thank you, the state of Perak, the government of the state, and the Chief Minister for inviting me to this presentation. Actually, I was asking, do we have the presentation ready? I have to ask you. Yeah. I was asking Kathy before we entered this room this morning if when she was in the space station, she saw countries underneath. And she said, no, of course we didn't. And the reason is that we only can see cities from the space. And the cities are pretty clear, and you can follow the lights, and to some extent, the state of development of the world is represented by that kind of picture. In Latin America, 80% of the population lives in cities, and most of them in the capital cities. So if we now get a piece of it, the blue country on the left is my country, the country of Ecuador. You can see the size of Brazil. Brazil is bigger than the rest of the countries of South America combined. And this represents that we have a system here. If you see the Amazon River that goes to the Atlantic, of course it belongs to Brazil. But all the countries that surround the Amazon, the Guyanas, the former Guyanas, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, etc., are contributing to the river. So when we have shared resources, limits between countries do not count. This is my country, Ecuador, and I am going to refer to a situation I lived as mayor of the city of Quito, that I think include many of the points that His Royal Highness made this morning. This is Quito at the base of the Pichincha volcano. You can see those black places. They represent forests, protective forests for the city. And you can see that only in some parts the city has climbed up to the mountain. We have scrublands. We call them pajonales. And the virtue of having that kind of vegetation is that when it rains, they, like a big sponge, absorb the water and then release the water slowly. So we had created a system to conserve water and then distribute water, system created by nature, not by humans. The water goes down, go to the system of sewers created by the municipality, cross and goes to the river on the other side. No, not too much human intervention. You can see that Quito is like a centipede. What are the problems for a city with that kind of shape? You have a volcano, a mountain on one side, and you have a river on the other side. And if you want to grow, you have to go either to the head or either to the tail. And that's the way you grow. And because of migration, internal migration, they continue coming to the capital city, they go far away, and that's a problem for the municipality. You have to construct kilometers of pipes just to bring water to those new places. Sewer and transportation, traffic, everything becomes a big problem when you have a very long and narrow city. However, one day they changed their mind and they decided to start climbing up the mountain. You see now how close the city is to the mountain. You can see that big creek in the middle. And what happens? For doing that, they cut trees and they burn the scrubland. As a consequence, we have less rain because we have less water retained, less evaporation. And when it rains, it can be catastrophic because the water comes directly from the mountain to the city. It is not retained by the scrublands. And the sewage system is constructed to transport water, not to transport plants or rocks and all the materials that they are bringing. You can see in the big creek in the center that you have people living there already. So imagine what is the situation when all the water comes down without anything to stop it. That's how you can see Quito from the Pichincha volcano now. Anything that happens in the mountain will affect our capital. So the first thing that we decided to do were public works. We had to construct small walls on top of the mountain to deviate the water, to make them make some twists to avoid coming down directly. We need to find somebody to finance that. It was the Inter-American Development Bank that did it. Then we needed education. You need to explain to people what they can do and what they shouldn't do even if they can do it. That creates critical thinking. That creates a sense of community. So they started talking and organizing themselves to avoid that in the future. Many of the problems of migration are created by national policies, by policies of the national government, not of the city or the state government. However, the cities ended up receiving all this information and all this influence. This is a new factor in the world. For Latin America, has been there for a long time. But urbanization is one of the big causes of the depredation that we have in the world right now. We have created a new system of consumption, a new system of living, a lot of consumerism, and we are extracting resources from the other parts to serve our needs. And we are part of the cities, all of us who are in this room today. To make the city bigger, you have to use good land for agriculture and use that for constructions. You have to bring people that was working in farmers before and now just come to work in the city. Of course, the rates of unemployment go bigger, and inequality and the problems of differences in the use of resources are more evident. There are certain neighborhoods that are well served with all the utilities, with all the facilities, but you don't have enough money to bring all those services to all the new barrios. When I compare the work of a mayor in a city of the first world with the work of a mayor in a city of the developing world, you see, in the first world, you use your resources to improve the quality of life. You think about new parks, about better conditions of life, etc. In developing countries, you are running behind the problems most of the time, especially because the population growth is so fast that it brings you out of your original planning of the city system that you have planned cannot be applied because you have more urgent necessities to cover. So that's a big difference and very bad for us. To prevent a disaster or a problem is cheaper and more natural than to remedy the problem. Can you imagine we invest a lot of money to create those walls in the mountain just to produce the same effect that we had before created by nature? Just because we burned the scrublands, we had to create the walls. It would be easier, cheaper, more natural, just don't do that. However, it's a good way of thinking, but we cannot make that real. Then comes the problem of the solution, connected with sustainable development, as we have heard. You need the technology, you need the innovation, you need the capacity, the technical capacity to do things. On the other hand, you need the money to pay for it. On the other hand, you need what I call the CUCO test. CUCO for Cultural Compatibility Test. That solution that you are implementing, how well connected is with the reality of your country, with the culture of your community. Because only if you can align the three things, the technology, the financing, the cultural and the social aspects of that, then the solutions can be applicable. And this has to be analyzed case by case. We cannot talk about sustainable development just quoting one anecdote after the other. We need a systematic approach. We need to think as a system that involves all these elements and all these factors. When my Minister of Environmental Issues, a woman that was the first woman from the Southern Hemisphere to be nominated President of the World Wild Fund internationally, started to talk about these things in my country and trying to get some people to support her cause. She heard something like one man saying, I love ecology, and I support your policies because I love to go fishing. The other said, I support ecology because I love the flowers in the spring. And do not confuse ecology, a systematic approach, with gardening, which are just some examples or showings of special circumstances. So, when you have a system, how do you assess the value of a system? And I had this problem, not as mayor of Quito, but as president of Ecuador. In that red zone called the Yasuni, 1 square kilometer in that part of my country has more biodiversity than the totality of the United States and Canada combined. 1 square kilometer. Of all the zones in the world that have been analyzed and explored, this is the richest from a biodiversity point of view. So the logic says preserve that for the future. On the other hand, Ecuador is a country dependent on oil. Oil represented at that time about 50% of our exports, and 50% of the money that received the national government to pay for everything, contractors, public works, salaries to teachers, the police, etc. So you have one need to preserve the pristine jungle that we have. On the other hand, the need for development. And you have pressures on both sides. We have had that problem before in another part of my country, which are the Galapagos Islands. People saying, increase development, allow more tourists, put this wonderful thing easy in the calendar for tourists to visit. People in the island saying, give us roads, give us electricity, give us development. We are citizens. We are not second-class citizens. And you have, on the other hand, all the ecological movements saying, don't touch it. And you have pressures on both sides and arguments on both sides. So what we did, not moving. Now, you have heard that power corrupts, and I say that PowerPoint corrupts absolutely. So that's how it looks like. You have that biodiversity, as I said. And you have the human element. Some tribes that have chosen voluntary isolation. They don't want to be contacted. They want to continue living as they have been living for centuries, millennia probably. What do you do in those cases? How do we know that they don't want to be contacted? because hey, they have killed some missionaries that came to try to bring them to civilization. What is the ethical thing to do? What is the right way to think about that? What are the values and the criteria that you should use? So, trying to solve the problem, we had, as in many parts of the world, because this is just an example, I am sure that we are resonating, all of us in this room, about that, an intergenerational problem. Preserve that for the future. On the other hand, some people say you have poverty now. If you have poverty now, why don't you use your resources now? And this oil-dependent country discovered that about 30% of the national oil reserves are beneath the surface of that paradise. Some people say the fossils will disappear, the energy will become more clean, etc. But if you destroy that forest, you will never recover it. Some others say, yes, but maybe if you have new energy, your oil will lose price, will be not as good as it is now. So use it now when you can get something in exchange. Others say the international thing. Who owns the oil? To whom the oil belongs? Some people say it belongs to the national government. We are a country. Other people say, no, 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 the oil is in this very specific region of the country. So the inhabitants of that region, the tribes of that region, would have the first right over that oil and the first decision to make about it. So national versus a local vision. But you can put the international as well. And you can have oil companies saying, we have signed contracts and we have to respect the rule of law, and the contract that we have signed says that we have the right to exploit that. So you have many different actors, interests, perspectives, arguments. Then you have a problem with the time frame. In public office, you have a time frame of, let's say, 4 years. In 4 years, you win an election, you have to produce something, develop to the people, get an evaluation, and finish your term. It's very clear. So those are political calendars. If you are talking about biodiversity, you are talking about evolutionary calendars. That's a completely different way to measure time. That brings a lot of uncertainty. What we decided was, we invented the term. We declared that part of my country intangible territory, meaning you cannot touch it. That was a presidential decision. We put all the authority of the presidential palace behind that. We received a lot of support and a lot of criticism for that. But that was our way to put our priorities in place. Then, when they were saying, please preserve that part of the world, think the only big, long, green lung that the world has now is the Amazonic part, the biggest one. You have a wonderful place in this country as well. But the Amazon is like the biggest one. So preserve that, don't touch that. Don't make the same mistakes we have done before in other parts of the world. And you hear the other argument as well. You used your resources to develop, and that was good. And when we want to use our resources to develop, that is bad. Why you have a double standard? And when somebody said, yes, but the Amazon River belongs to the world, not to Brazil. Why? Because this is something needed by everybody. A minister of Brazil at that time said, I agree. So when something is needed by everybody, it should be the property of everybody. I don't have any problem with that concept. Let's start with oil. The world needs oil. Why oil does not belong to everybody? So that's the kind of argument that we always have. So we said, okay, we will not use that oil. We will not touch that, but help us with some kind of compensation. So we were calculated the amount of tons of clean air that we were offering to the world each year just by keeping things as they are. Let's give some value to that. Let's try to calculate and please the developed nations, etc., help us paying part of that price. We are not asking for 100%, but give us something so we could produce some well-being for our people. Unfortunately, the lip service was enormous. The real contributions were almost non-existent. We said that in the previous case, it's applicable here. You have ecology versus development. Ecology versus poverty. You have ecology versus elections. People want to vote for people that will attend the needs they have. There's a saying in the United States, I think it is very precise, that says that politics is about answering the question, what have you done for me lately? That's the question for the candidate. What have you done for me lately? And when you have elections and you are preserving the forests, etc., instead of saying, here's the school, here's the road, here's the health center, you have nothing to offer. And ironically or tragically, maybe your opponent that is saying, I will use those resources, can win the next election and destroy whatever you have done, because people are more practical in that sense. So, that's a composition that I think represents the alternative. Do you keep the river or convert the river in the sign of money? We need a systemic vision of shared resources. National frontiers for many problems in the world are useless. It's a way of thinking imposed by men and women in their heads that many times have nothing to do with reality. We have had a problem with Peru, our bordering nation, and we have had wars many times in the last years. We finished that in 1998. We signed a peace treaty that, in the words of President Bill Clinton, open quote, solved the longest source of international armed conflict of this hemisphere, close quote. Some of the questions that I have received are, when you signed the peace treaty, the people in the region living in the Amazon jungle, where did they get their passports to travel? Answer, they don't travel. They live in the Amazon, they feel very happy there. It is not in the frame of their minds to travel international. To whom they pay taxes? Answer, they don't pay taxes. They are very primitive communities that live according to their own laws, and we respect that. And for them, the blood connection was stronger than any political limit fixed by a country or an international treaty. They are tribal more than Ecuadorians or Peruvians. And it's very difficult to understand that, again, from the cities, when that is happening in the regions. That is one of the reasons why wars can be so tragic, because they are discussed, they are declared in capital cities, and usually they are fought in the frontiers or abroad. So the people that live where the wars are fought are those that really feel the problems, but the decisions do not belong to them. It's the same with ecology. Decisions are made in national policies in the capital cities, but the inhabitants of the regions that will be affected will suffer the consequences. So we need a systemic view. We were trying to sell air, and this, unfortunately, didn't work. We started a national campaign, an international campaign. It was very well received. We created a lot of national consciousness about the resources, about the importance of preserving them. We got a lot of support from the international community. We were able to incorporate the users, not these tribes that were very isolated, but the rest of them. We used all the presidential power behind it. We got a recognition from the World Wild Fund. They gave to my government the Gift to the Earth Award, the highest award of the WWF for these policies to protect the environment. And unfortunately, some years after, the government said, we need more money. And now we are extracting oil from that part of our territory. And the problem is not to extract oil, you can find the technology, etc. But when you open a road, many people come and they try to settle there and they start cutting the trees and everything. So that's something that you can maybe control a little bit, but you will never be able to stop. Conclusions. This is not a black and white situation. It's very complex. The system is complex. And if you do not assume the complexity of all the elements incorporated in it, we are really making a cartoon of the problem instead of trying to analyze it. You don't have always a clear win-win situation. You need to make trade-offs. What is more important? The economy, the social situation of the people, the ecology. We don't have methods or maps that are proved and that will work anytime you want to use them. We go by trial and error. We make mistakes. We learn by doing. And the time is short, and the mistakes are costly, but there's no other way to act. We need a cooperation between the local communities and the markets. It is not an either-or solution. You cannot take the local vision against the markets, or the markets over the local vision. You need to coordinate them. And the effort that requires to coordinate it is enormous, as we heard this morning. So all these things are utopias, not real goals. We are in the process of creating, transforming utopias into goals, trying to find ways to measure them. And the utopia, by definition, is something that the moment you come closer to it goes far, far away. That is what constitutes a utopia. Then somebody said, so what is the merit, what is the value to have a utopia if you know that you'll never will reach that? Well, the merit is that it will help you to walk, because you have this kind of shining star that you can go towards. Finally, there was a big debate in my country between many groups about the Amazonia. To whom belongs the Amazonia? And the problem was caught as a Gordian knot. Because in front of the people that said the Amazonia belongs to the country, the Amazonian belongs to the community, the Amazonian belongs to the future, the Amazonian belongs to the oil companies, a leader from those tribes living there said, we never asked that question, because we live in the Amazonia. We live off the products of the Amazonia. We live with the Amazonia. So the question that to whom belongs the Amazonia has no sense, because we belong to the Amazonia. We are part of it. It's part of our environment, and we are all in that. And in that sense, we are the crew of planet Earth, as Cathy said, and we have the moral responsibility of working to make this world better in the future, because we belong to planet Earth. Because it is very expensive to put somebody out of our atmosphere. It costs a lot of money. You can send only 3 or 6. What do we do with the rest of the people? But to create a better world for all of them. And in that sense, as in anything else in life, we have to work together. So thank you for inviting me from the other side of planet Earth. And I hope that talking about the specific problems of my country, I could have used them to project something that is common for all of us and invite all of us to act as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih, thank you, Your Excellency. Ampun Tuanku, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the opening ceremony of the Pangkor Dialogue 2017. Ampun Tuanku, sekian sahajalah majlis perasmian Pangkor Dialogue 2017 ini. Berikut ini, Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku disembah silakan untuk melawat pameran dan bagi upacara pelancaran buku. Ampun Tuanku, beribu-ribu ampun, sembah patik, mohon diampun. Mengumumkan keberangkatan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Sultan Perak Darul Rizwan diiringi Yang Amat Berhormat Menteri Besar Perak Darul Rizwan serta Div-Div kenamaan. Announcing the departure of His Royal Highness the Sultan of Perak Darul Rizwan, accompanied by the Honourable Menteri Besar of Perak Darul Rizwan and dignitaries. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now adjourn for the royal lunch, which will be served on level 1. To all speakers and participants, please take note that the afternoon plenary sessions will begin at 2:30 p.m. 2:30 p.m. Economy will be in Hall 1, Women in Hall 2, Entrepreneurship and Innovation in Hall 3, and Dare to be Different will be in Plenary Room 4 on level 1. Thank you, and do enjoy your lunch.